Picture this. Tuscany, late summer. The sun hangs low, a big, heavy orange in the sky, casting long shadows across rolling hills of grapevines. This is the time of the asterisk. Vendemmia asterisk, the grape harvest. It's a time of celebration, of hard work paying off. Families and friends gather, their laughter and chatter echoing through the valleys. But in one particular vineyard, nestled deep in the countryside, the air holds a different kind of sound. It started subtly, a faint whimper, almost mistaken for the rustle of leaves or a distant bird. Old Marco, his back bent from 60 years of harvesting these same vines, was the first to notice. He paused, snippers in hand, and tilted his head. "Did you hear that?" he asked his grandson, Leo, who was working a few rows over. Leo just shrugged, his headphones blasting modern music his grandfather couldn't stand. But then others heard it. A young woman named Sophia, her face flushed from the sun, stopped and looked around. "It sounds like a child," she whispered, a flicker of concern in her eyes. The sound was clearer now, a soft, mournful cry. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The cheerful banter of the harvesters quieted down, replaced by an uneasy silence, broken only by that strange, sad sound. A search began. People fanned out, their heavy boots crunching on the dry soil. They called out, "Is anyone there? And hello? Little one, are you lost?" Their voices were swallowed by the endless rows of gnarled vines, heavy with deep purple grapes that looked almost black in the fading light. With every step they took deeper into the vineyard, the crying grew louder. It wasn't just a whimper anymore. It was a full-blown wail. A sound of profound, gut-wrenching sorrow that seemed to vibrate in the very air around them. It was a child's cry, yes, but there was something else in it, something ancient and deeply unsettling. The sound wrapped around them, pulling them further in, making the hairs on their arms stand on end. Leo, having finally taken off his headphones, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. "Grandpa, this is weird," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "It's like the sound is moving." Marco didn't answer. His face, weathered like the bark of an old olive tree, was pale. He was looking at the vines, at the very plants themselves, with an expression of dawning horror. The crying was deafening now, a symphony of grief that seemed to be coming from the ground beneath their feet, from the twisting branches, from the clusters of fruit themselves. Sophia reached out a hand, her fingers brushing against a bunch of grapes. As she touched them, the crying surged, and she swore she could feel a tremor run through the vine, up her arm, and into her very soul. She snatched her hand back as if burned. That's when they all started to notice it. The grapes, they weren't just hanging there. They were weeping. A thick, dark red liquid, almost identical to the juice they were there to harvest, was seeping from the skins of the fruit. It dripped onto the leaves and stained the earth below, forming dark, sticky puddles. It looked like blood. The whole vineyard was crying tears of wine. Panic began to set in. This wasn't a lost child. This was something else, entirely. An old legend, a story whispered by grandparents to frighten misbehaving children, came rushing back into Marco's mind. The story of the Spirito della Vigna, the spirit of the vineyard. They said the vineyard was alive, that it had a soul, and that every harvest it felt the pain of its children being torn from the branch. It mourned. The crying intensified, no longer just sorrowful but angry. The wind picked up, howling through the rows, shaking the vines violently. Leaves swirled around them in a frenzy. The soft, yielding ground suddenly felt like a trap, the neat rows of vines transforming into the bars of a cage. They were no longer harvesters, they were intruders, trespassers in a place of mourning. The wailing was inside their heads now, an unbearable psychic scream. The air grew thick and heavy, smelling of fermented fruit and freshly turned earth, the scent of a grave. Leo stumbled, looking back the way they came, but the path seemed to have vanished. The rows of vines appeared to shift and twist, closing in on them, the world outside the vineyard ceasing to exist. Marco grabbed Leo's arm, his knuckles white. "We have to leave," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper against the sonic assault. "We have to leave it all." He knew what the legends said. The spirit didn't just mourn. It demanded an offering, a price for the pain. One for one. A life for the harvest. As they turned to flee, they realized the crying wasn't just around them anymore. It was for them. The vineyard wasn't just sad. It was hungry. The tendrils of the vines, which had seemed so familiar just an hour ago, now looked like grasping fingers. They began to lengthen, snaking across the ground, wrapping around ankles. Sophia screamed as a vine coiled around her leg, pulling her down. Others tripped and fell, ensnared by the living plants. The ground beneath them grew soft and muddy, not with water, but with the dark, red juice that now flowed in rivers between the rows. The vineyard was bleeding, and it wanted them to bleed with it. The last thing they saw was not the moon or the stars, but a canopy of leaves and grasping tendrils closing in above them. The last thing they heard was not the sound of their own screams, but the triumphant, terrible wail of the child in the vineyard, a cry that would echo through the Tuscan hills for generations to come, a warning to any who would dare disturb its sorrowful harvest. The next morning, the sun would rise on a silent, peaceful vineyard. The ground stained a deep crimson, the vines heavy with perfectly ripe fruit, waiting. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another tale from the dark corners of the world. Let me know in the comments what you think happened to the harvesters. Until next time, stay safe.